The sky over Keeler Prime was already burning. No warning. No diplomacy. No time to run. The cracks came out of nothing, thin, jagged ships slicing through orbit like blades. Within seconds, the planet's defense grid collapsed. Satellites blinked out one by one, turning into silent debris drifting through the upper atmosphere. The Council fleet assigned to protect the system lasted less than 4 minutes. On the surface, cities were already evacuating. Millions of beings, scaled, feathered, furred, ran through glowing streets as sirens howled. Above them, streaks of red plasma carved scars across the sky. "They're not targeting military," the Keeler governor whispered, watching the live feed with shaking hands. "They're targeting population centers." No one answered him, because everyone already knew what that meant. Extermination. The Galactic Council had protocols for war. They had procedures for invasion. They even had contingency plans for extinction-level events. But the cracks didn't follow rules. They didn't negotiate. They didn't conquer. They erased. A transmission opened across every remaining channel in the system. Static filled the airwaves, followed by a sound that wasn't quite language, more like something scratching at the inside of the mind. Then silence. The first city vanished in a column of light. In orbit, the last surviving Council cruiser broke formation and tried to flee. It didn't even make it to jump range. A swarm of crack ships surrounded it, their hulls flickering like broken reflections. For a moment, the cruiser hung there, alone, helpless. Then it disappeared in a burst of white fire. "Signal the core worlds," one of the Council aides said, his voice barely holding together. "Tell them we need reinforcements. Tell them. They won't come." The room went still. Every eye turned toward the old strategist standing near the back wall. His scales were dull with age, his voice calm in a way that made it worse. "They've seen this pattern before," he continued. "By the time reinforcements arrive, there will be nothing left to save." Outside, another city burned. The governor clenched his fists. "So we just watch?" No one answered, because that was exactly what the galaxy had learned to do. Watch, wait, record the loss. Hope the next system wasn't theirs. High above the chaos, hidden beyond the broken debris field, something else slipped into orbit. No flashes, no energy surge, no announcement, just mass. A shadow large enough to blot out the stars. At first, the sensors didn't even register it. The system was too saturated with interference, too overwhelmed by destruction. But then one surviving array locked onto it and froze. "Governor," the sensor officer whispered, staring at the readings. "There's something else here." The governor stepped closer. "Another crack fleet?" The officer shook his head slowly. "No. This isn't them." On the screen, the object came into focus. It wasn't sleek like Council ships. It wasn't elegant like alien design. It was heavy, a brutal slab of dark metal, layered with armor that looked more functional than beautiful. Its surface was scarred, patched, uneven, like it had survived things it had no right to survive. And it was enormous, larger than anything the Council had ever deployed in a single hull. For a moment, no one spoke, because no one recognized it. Then the old strategist leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "I've seen this design before," he murmured. The ship moved. Not fast, not graceful, deliberate. It shifted its massive body between the planet and the incoming crack swarm, as if placing itself in the line of fire. The first wave of plasma struck it seconds later. The explosions lit up its hull in violent flashes. But the ship didn't retreat. It didn't even slow down. Instead, something along its sides began to move. Rows of gun ports opened like waking eyes. The comms channel crackled to life. For a brief second, everyone expected static, or alien noise, or silence. Instead, they heard a human voice. Calm, steady, unafraid. "This is the UEB Leviathan," the voice said. "All civilian traffic. Fall back behind our position." A pause. Then, "We've got this." The governor stared at the screen, unable to breathe. "Humans?" he whispered. Above Keeler Prime, the giant ship turned its guns toward the swarm. And for the first time since the cracks had arrived, something in the sky did not look afraid. The second wave hit harder. The cracks adjusted fast. They always did. Where their first attack had been scattered and probing, this one was precise. Coordinated. Dozens of their thin, blade-like ships broke formation and dove straight toward the planet, ignoring the massive human ship now sitting in their path. "They're not engaging it," the sensor officer said. "They're going around." Of course they were. To the cracks, ships didn't matter. Targets did. And the target was still the planet. "Leviathan," the governor said into the open channel, his voice tight. "They're bypassing you. They're going for the surface." For a moment there was no reply. Then the human voice returned. "We see them. No panic. No urgency. Just certainty." High above the atmosphere, the Leviathan moved. Not to chase. Not to flank. It simply shifted its massive frame downward, placing itself directly between the diving swarm and the planet below. "They're putting themselves in the firing line," one of the council aides said, disbelief creeping into his voice. "No one does that." The cracks didn't hesitate. They fired. Dozens of red plasma beams slammed into the Leviathan's hull at once. Explosions rippled across its surface, tearing away armor plating, lighting the darkness with violent bursts of energy. Inside the council chamber, someone gasped. "That will breach them," another whispered. "No ship can tank that much." The Leviathan didn't move. It didn't dodge. It didn't retreat. It absorbed. More shots followed. Then more. The cracks focused their fire, pouring everything into the giant ship now blocking their path. The idea was simple: destroy the obstacle, then finish the job. But the obstacle didn't break. "Damage reports?" Captain Miller's voice cut across her own bridge, calm but sharp. "Outer hull integrity dropping to 70%, an officer replied. "Multiple impact zones. Internal systems holding." "Good," Miller said. "Hold course." Outside, the Leviathan continued to descend, its bulk casting a shadow across the upper atmosphere. Below it, the planet cities, once targets, were now shielded by something that refused to move. "They're protecting us," the governor said quietly, as realization settled in. "Not fighting for territory. Not fighting for resources. Protecting." Another volley struck the Leviathan, harder this time. One of the impacts tore open a section of its outer plating, venting atmosphere into space. Still, it held. On the bridge, a younger officer swallowed hard. "Captain, if we keep taking hits like this..." Miller didn't look away from the forward display. "We will." A pause. Then she added, softer, "Because they can't." Silence followed that, because everyone on that bridge understood exactly what she meant. The cracks dove again, trying to slip through gaps in the Leviathan's coverage, trying to find an angle, trying to reach the planet. But there were no gaps. Every time one of their ships broke formation, the Leviathan adjusted slow, deliberate movements that always put its armored bulk between the threat and the civilians below. It wasn't fast. It wasn't elegant. It was immovable, like a wall. On the surface of Keeler Prime, the bombardment began to thin. Fewer strikes reached the atmosphere. Fewer cities burned. People started to notice. They looked up, and for the first time since the attack began, they didn't see death coming down from the sky. They saw something standing in its way. Back in orbit, the cracks changed tactics again. "They're targeting specific sections now," the sensor officer reported. Trying to punch through one point, a concentrated barrage hit the Leviathan's port side. The armor there glowed under the sustained assault, metal bending, buckling under pressure. "Structural stress exceeding safe limits," an engineer warned. Miller nodded once. "That's where they think we'll break." She leaned forward slightly. "Rotate 15 degrees. Keep that section facing them." The officer blinked. "Captain, that's our weakest side." "I know." The Leviathan shifted again, exposing its damaged section directly to the incoming fire. Inside the council chamber, the governor stared in disbelief. "Why would they do that?" The old strategist answered quietly. Because they're not trying to survive. Another impact struck. Then another. The damaged section groaned but held. Behind it, untouched by the barrage, the planet remained safe. Minutes passed. Then something changed. The cracks began to pull back. At first, it was subtle. A few ships breaking formation. A slight hesitation in their attack pattern. They're repositioning? The sensor officer guessed. Miller's eyes narrowed. No, she said. They're realizing that this wasn't like the others. That this target wouldn't run. Wouldn't break. Wouldn't leave. The Leviathan's guns finished powering up. Across its massive hull, thousands of ports locked into position. For the first time since the battle began, the human ship fired. Return fire, Miller said quietly, and the wall became a weapon. The first volley didn't look advanced. It didn't glow. It didn't hum with alien energy. It didn't bend space or tear reality. It was just metal. Thousands of high-velocity shells erupted from the Leviathan's sides in a deafening storm, tearing through space like a solid wall of iron and fire. What is that? One council aide whispered. The old strategist didn't look away from the screen. Ballistics, he said quietly. Primitive. A pause. Effective. The cracks reacted instantly. Their ships twisted and scattered, moving with unnatural speed, their hulls flickering as their cloaking systems struggled to adapt to the sudden chaos. But the Leviathan wasn't aiming at ships. It was aiming at space. Expand the spread, Miller ordered. Fill the gaps. The guns obeyed. The second volley didn't target, it saturated. A cloud of explosive shells flooded the entire approach vector between the cracks and the planet. There was no safe path, no clean angle, no perfect maneuver, just death. A crack ship tried to dive through it. It made it halfway. Then the shells detonated. The explosion wasn't clean. It wasn't surgical. It was violent and messy. Shrapnel ripping through the thin alien hull, tearing it apart in a burst of fire and fragments. Another ship followed. Then another. Each one vanished into the storm. They can't get through, the sensor officer said, disbelief in his voice. There's too much. Exactly, Miller replied. On the Leviathan's bridge, the gunnery officer grinned despite the tension. They're fast, Captain. But they're not faster than everything. Outside, the battlefield transformed. The cracks had always relied on precision, quick strikes, perfect angles, surgical destruction. The Leviathan gave them none of that. It turned space itself into a weapon. Every direction they moved, every path they chose was already filled with human firepower. The more they tried to adapt, the more they trapped themselves inside the storm. One of the larger crack vessels, likely a command ship, pulled back, its hull flickering as it attempted to reestablish control over the scattered swarm. It didn't get the chance. Target the center mass, Miller said. Take out their coordination. Aye, Captain. The Leviathan's main rail cannons charged. Unlike the smaller guns, these didn't fire clouds. They fired judgment. A deep, thunderous crack echoed through the ship as the first slug launched. A dense rod of metal accelerated to impossible speed. Crossed the distance in a heartbeat. The crack command ship didn't even react. The impact punched straight through it. One side in, the other side out. For a single second, the alien vessel hung there, split by something it couldn't comprehend. Then it came apart. Silently, violently, gone. Back in the council chamber, no one spoke. Because this wasn't just victory. This was dominance. They're dismantling them, someone whispered. No, the old strategist corrected softly. They're teaching them. Out in the void, the remaining crack ships broke formation completely. Their movements lost their precision, their coordination collapsing without their command vessel. They weren't attacking anymore. They were trying to escape. Captain, the sensor officer reported. Enemy vessels are retreating. Miller didn't smile. Of course they are, she said. They've learned. A pause. Then, don't let them leave. The Leviathan surged forward. Not fast, but unstoppable. Its massive engines pushed it through the debris field, through the burning remains of shattered ships, straight toward the fleeing swarm. The smaller guns continued firing, hurting the cracks, forcing them into tighter and tighter clusters. "There's nowhere left for them to go," the gunnery officer said. "Good," Miller replied. One of the remaining crack commanders made a final decision. Desperation. Its ship turned sharply, abandoning escape entirely, and accelerated straight toward the Leviathan. A ramming course. "They're going to collide," someone shouted. "Let them," Miller said. No evasive maneuvers. No defensive fire. The Leviathan held its path. The distance closed. Faster. Faster. The alien ship screamed forward, its hull glowing under the strain, its entire purpose reduced to one final act of destruction. At the last second, Miller gave a single command. Full forward. The Leviathan didn't dodge. It advanced. The impact was unequal. The human battleship didn't shatter. It didn't even slow. Crushed. The crack vessel crumpled against the Leviathan's reinforced prow, folding inward like fragile glass under a hammer. The collision ripped it apart instantly, fragments scattering across the void. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, nothing left to fight. The battlefield went still. Burning wreckage drifted in orbit above Keeler Prime. The red glow of plasma fire faded, replaced by the quiet darkness of space. Below, the planet survived. On the Leviathan's bridge, the tension finally broke. Enemy forces eliminated, the sensor officer confirmed. No cheering. No celebration. Just quiet. Captain Miller looked out at the planet below. Green, alive, untouched by the destruction that had almost claimed it. Behind her, one of the officers exhaled slowly. They ran. Miller shook her head. "No," she said softly. "They tried." A transmission came through. The governor of Keeler Prime appeared on screen, his face wet with tears. You saved us," he said, his voice breaking. "Why? We aren't even." Miller didn't let him finish. She kept her eyes on the planet. "Because," she said quietly, "we know what it's like." A brief pause. When no one comes. Silence filled the channel. Across the galaxy, the footage spread. Not just of the battle, but of what came after. A ship that took the hits. A crew that didn't run. A species that chose to stand in front of death, for someone else. And for the first time, the galaxy wasn't just afraid of humans. It was starting to understand them. The victory spread faster than any fleet ever could. Within hours, every major system in the galaxy had seen the footage. The burning sky, the impossible ship, the moment it stepped in front of a dying world and refused to move. But what stayed with them wasn't just the battle. It was the choice. They took the hits, one council analyst said quietly, replaying the clip for the 10th time. They didn't have to. But they did. Across the Galactic Council chamber, dozens of species sat in uneasy silence. The usual noise, debates, arguments, layered voices speaking over each other, was gone. Now there was only one question. What are humans becoming? No one answered, because no one liked the answer. At the center of the chamber, the senior council ambassador finally spoke. They are becoming necessary. That word landed heavily. Necessary species weren't controlled. They weren't ignored. And they certainly weren't weak. They intervened without authorization, another delegate snapped. They acted outside council command structure. That alone, the old strategist interrupted calmly, is the reason Keeler Prime still exists. Silence again. No one could argue with that, because the council had done nothing, and the humans had done everything. Far from the chamber, in a darker, quieter part of space, the Leviathan drifted toward the nearest neutral hub, Aurelia Station. It wasn't a military base. It wasn't a council stronghold. It was neutral ground. Trade, diplomacy, observation, and now, tension. As the massive ship approached, traffic around the station slowed. Smaller vessels pulled back, keeping distance as the Leviathan's scarred hull came into view. It didn't look like a victor. It looked like something that had survived. Burn marks still lined its sides. Sections of armor were patched mid-flight. One entire segment near the port side was visibly darker, reinforced after taking the heaviest impacts. They didn't even stop to repair fully, a dock officer whispered. They came straight here. Of course they did, another replied. They want to be seen. Inside the Leviathan, Captain Miller stood in silence as the station filled the forward display. She didn't look impressed. She looked tired. Docking clearance granted, came the station's voice over comms. Berth 03. You are welcome. There was a slight hesitation on the word welcome. Miller noticed. Take us in, she said. As the Leviathan locked into position, thousands of eyes watched from across the station. Aliens from 100 species gathered at viewing decks, staring at the human ship that had just done what entire fleets could not. Some looked inspired, some looked afraid, and some looked angry. Deep within Aurelia Station, behind layers of security and silence, High Admiral Valerius of the Tran Empire watched the same footage everyone else had seen. He did not look impressed. He looked insulted. They call this heroism? He said softly, his 4 eyes narrowing as the Leviathan crushed the last crack ship again on screen. One of his advisors shifted uncomfortably. The galaxy sees it differently, Admiral. The humans are gaining influence. Valerius finished. A cold smile spread across his face. They are gaining attention. He turned away from the screen. For centuries, we have been the shield of this galaxy. Our fleets, our discipline, our strength. He gestured back toward the footage. And now one ship appears, one act, and suddenly they are legends. No one answered, because they knew where this was going. Valerius stepped closer to the observation window, staring out at the massive human vessel now docked in the distance. It was ugly, heavy, inefficient, and yet it had done the impossible. That ship, he said quietly, is not a symbol of strength. A pause. It is a threat. Behind him, one of the advisors spoke carefully. What are you suggesting? Valerius didn't turn around. I am suggesting, he said, his voice smooth and controlled, that the galaxy is very quick to worship what it does not understand. Another pause, and very slow to stop it. Once it grows too powerful. The room felt colder. You want war? The advisor asked. Valerius shook his head slowly. No. War was messy, visible, risky, and if the humans won again, it would only make them stronger. I want doubt, he said. I want fear. He finally turned back to them, his expression calm, but dangerous. I want the galaxy to see that this Leviathan can bleed. Silence followed, because everyone in that room understood what that meant. Not a battle, not a declaration, an accident, a failure. A moment where the unstoppable human machine broke. And when it did, the legend would crack. Valerius looked back at the distant ship one last time. Prepare a welcome, he said softly. Let us show our human friends how fragile they really are. The welcome was perfect. Too perfect. Aurelia Station's main docking hall had been transformed overnight. Soft golden light reflected off polished crystal walls, and representatives from dozens of species stood in carefully arranged rows. Music, subtle, elegant, filled the air. Everything about it said one thing: respect. Captain Sarah Miller stepped off the Leviathan with measured steps. Her uniform was clean, but it couldn't hide the exhaustion in her eyes. Weeks of non-stop combat had worn her down, but she didn't show it. Humans didn't show that part. At the end of the reception line stood High Admiral Valerius. Tall, composed, smiling. Too much. Captain Miller, he said, bowing slightly, all 4 eyes focused on her. Your arrival honors Aurelia Station. Miller returned a short nod. Admiral. No smile. No warmth. Just acknowledgement. Valerius gestured toward the massive ship visible through the transparent docking barrier. Your vessel is extraordinary. We have never seen such resilience in a single hull. It does what it needs to, Miller replied. A brief pause. Valerius' smile didn't fade, but something behind it shifted. We would like to assist, he continued smoothly. Your ship has taken significant damage. Our engineers specialize in advanced thermal systems. With our help, we could restore your engines within hours. Miller didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked past him, toward the station, the crowd, the watching eyes, then back to him. My engineers prefer to handle their own repairs, she said. Polite, firm, dismissive. For a fraction of a second, the air tightened. But Valeria's recovered instantly. Of course, he said. Human pride is well known. A few nearby delegates shifted uncomfortably. But, he added gently, this is not about pride. It is about cooperation. A small team, limited access, purely to assist. Miller's jaw tightened slightly. Something felt wrong. Not obvious, not provable, just wrong. Behind her, one of her officers leaned in slightly. Captain, he murmured. We don't need. I know, she said quietly. Valeria's watched the exchange, still smiling. Surely, he continued, after what you have done for the galaxy, we can offer something in return. That was the pressure point. Not force, not threat, obligation. Miller exhaled slowly. Fine, she said. Small team, restricted access. My crew supervises everything. Valeria's inclined his head. Naturally, but his eyes said something else. Something colder. Deep inside the Leviathan, the atmosphere changed. Human crew moved through the corridors with purpose, repairing damage, reinforcing armor, running diagnostics. The ship felt alive, even in recovery. Then the visitors arrived. 3 Tran engineers. Clean uniforms. Polished tools. Perfect credentials. Too perfect. Escort them to engineering, Chief Ramirez ordered. And don't leave them alone. Yes, sir. The Tran engineers nodded politely as they were guided through the ship's interior. They observed everything. The bulkheads, the wiring, the layout, memorizing, calculating. When they reached the lower engineering decks, the hum of the Leviathan's core filled the air. A deep, steady pulse like a heartbeat. One of the Tran engineers paused slightly. Impressive, he said. Yeah, the human escort replied. She's got personality. They didn't understand that. Machines didn't have personality, but they didn't question it. Instead, they waited for the moment. Hours passed. Repairs continued. Nothing unusual. Until a blind spot, a narrow maintenance corridor, partially sealed after battle damage. Sensors limited. Traffic minimal. The Tran engineers moved quickly. One of them pulled a small device from his case. It wasn't large. It didn't glow. It didn't look dangerous. That was the point. Molecular destabilizer. One of them whispered, set it near the gravity core, and the next time this ship accelerates. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. They placed it behind a cluster of fuel conduits, hidden deep within the ship's structure. Silent. Waiting. The lead engineer activated it. A faint pulse. Then nothing. Done, he said. They turned to leave. They didn't notice the shadow behind them. It moved quietly. Soft steps. Careful. Watching. A golden retriever. Buster. The ship's unofficial mascot, and Chief Ramirez's constant companion. Buster tilted his head slightly. Something smelled wrong. Not the usual mix of oil, metal, and human sweat. Something sharper. Colder. Fear. The dog stepped closer. The Tran engineers froze for a second. Just an animal, one muttered. Buster didn't bark. He watched. Then slowly, he grabbed one of their bags in his teeth and ran. Hey! One of the engineers shouted. Too late. Buster sprinted down the corridor, claws scraping against the metal floor, moving faster than anything that size should. The engineers reacted instantly. After it, they ran. No longer careful. No longer subtle. Just desperate. Buster turned a corner, then another, racing through the Leviathan's inner pathways, dodging crew members, slipping past startled officers. What the hell? Someone shouted as the dog flew past. The chase grew louder, faster. Messier. The spies had forgotten something important. This wasn't their ship. They didn't know the paths. Buster did. The bridge doors slid open. Buster burst through, straight toward Captain Miller. He skidded to a stop and dropped the bag at her feet. Panting, proud. The room froze. "What is this?" Miller asked, her voice suddenly cold. Behind Buster, the Tran engineers appeared, breathing hard, cornered. Too late. Miller looked from them to the bag, then back. Slowly. "Open it," she said. A security officer stepped forward and unzipped the bag. Inside, blueprints, core schematics, and a small remote device. Silence. Heavy. Deadly. Miller's expression didn't change, but her voice did. "This," she said quietly, "is a very strange way to fix an engine." Security teams moved instantly, weapons raised, surrounding, locking down every exit. The Tran engineers didn't resist. They didn't need to. Their mission was already complete. Back in engineering, the device pulsed once more, hidden, waiting, and deep inside the Leviathan, something had just been set in motion. The bridge stayed silent for 3 full seconds. That was all it took. "Lock them down," Captain Miller said. No raised voice, no anger, just finality. Security teams moved instantly. The Tran engineers were forced to their knees, their tools stripped away, their comms disabled. One of them tried to speak. "Captain, this is a misunderstanding." "Stop," Miller said. He stopped, because something in her tone made it clear. This was already over. "Chief," she said into her comm. Crackle. Then Ramirez's voice. "I'm here. Tell me you found something." A pause. Then, "Yeah." Not relief, not panic, just confirmation. "There's a device in the lower core access," Ramirez continued. "Small, nasty, molecular destabilizer. If we'd pushed engines at full thrust." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Miller closed her eyes for half a second, then opened them. "Can you shut it down?" "Already working on it." "Do it faster." "Yes, ma'am." The channel cut. Miller looked back at the kneeling engineers. No fear in their faces. No regret. Just calculation. That told her everything. "This wasn't rogue," she said quietly. No one argued, because it was obvious. This was planned, sanctioned, ordered. She turned toward the main display. "Open a full broadcast," she said. "Captain?" One officer hesitated. "To who?" Miller didn't look away. "Everyone." Across Aurelia Station, screens flickered to life. In docking bays, in trade halls, in private chambers. Even in the sealed observation room where High Admiral Valerius stood, the image appeared. Captain Sarah Miller. Alive. Unbroken. Watching. Valerius' smile faded for the first time. On the Leviathan's bridge, Miller stepped forward. No speech prepared. No script. Just truth. "Admiral Valerius," she said, her voice carrying across the entire station. No titles. No respect. Just a name. "You sent engineers onto my ship." A pause. "To help." Her eyes hardened. "They brought a device designed to turn my hull into dust." Silence spread across the station, because everyone understood what that meant. Not an accident. Not a misunderstanding. An assassination attempt. Valerius stepped forward into his own camera frame, composed again, but not perfectly. "Captain," he said smoothly, "I assure you, this is a grave misinterpretation. If any of my people acted outside orders, they didn't." Miller cut him off. Flat. Certain. Behind her, the security team dragged one of the engineers into frame. The bag. The device. The proof. "All of this," she continued, "was planned." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You tried to destroy my ship while we were repairing damage from a war you didn't have the courage to fight." That line hit hard. Across the station, murmurs spread. Some shocked. Some agreeing. Valeria's expression tightened. "You tread dangerous ground, Captain," he said. "Accusations like this are facts." Another interruption. Another shift in power. Miller stepped closer to the camera. "We have a rule on Earth. she said. A pause. Long enough for everyone to listen. We don't start fights. Behind her, the Leviathan's engines began to hum. Low, deep, alive. But we finished them. The ship moved. Just slightly, but enough. On the external cameras, every ship in Aurelia Station could see it. The Leviathan's massive prow slowly advancing. Not toward open space. Toward something else. Valeria's private flagship. Golden. Elegant. Untouched by war. The distance closed. Slowly. Deliberately. On every screen. It looked like a mountain deciding to move. Captain. One of the council members tried to speak. Miller ignored him. If I see another one of your people near my ship, she continued calmly, I won't use my guns. The Leviathan stopped. Its nose now just meters from the Admiral's vessel. A single push would end it. I'll just park here, she finished. Silence. Absolute. Valeria's didn't move. For the first time in his long career, he didn't have a response. Because this wasn't politics. This wasn't negotiation. This was something else. Something simple. Something human. A threat that didn't need to be shouted. Because it was already real. Miller held his gaze for a few seconds longer. Then, stand down, she said. The Leviathan powered down its forward thrust. Slowly pulling back. The tension didn't break. It shifted. Across Aurelia Station, no one spoke. No one argued. No one questioned. Because they had just seen it. Not just power. Control. The ability to destroy and the choice not to. On the Leviathan's bridge, Miller turned away from the screen. Device status? She asked. Ramirez's voice came back, slightly breathless. Deactivated. A pause. Barely. Miller nodded once. Good. Behind her, one of the younger officers whispered. They really thought they could break us. Miller didn't smile. No, she said quietly. They thought we'd act like them. She looked back out at the stars. At the station. At the galaxy watching. They're starting to learn, she added. Across Aurelia Station, the message spread. Fast. Clear. Unavoidable. Humans weren't just dangerous because of what they could do. They were dangerous because of what they chose not to do. And that made them something far worse. Unpredictable. And impossible to control. The galaxy didn't celebrate. It went quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes after peace. The kind that comes after understanding something dangerous. Across council channels, encrypted lines lit up with one message repeating in different forms. If humans decide to act, who can stop them? But there was no time to answer, because the cracks were not finished. Multiple signals lost. The report came in from a distant system. Then another. Then 3 more. At first, it looked like random failures. Ships going silent, colonies losing contact, trade routes collapsing without explanation. No distress calls. No debris. No survivors. Just absence. They're not attacking like before, one council scientist said, scanning the data. There's no pattern. There is a pattern, the old strategist replied. Everyone turned. They've disappeared. Deep inside the council chamber, a new projection filled the air. A massive cloud. Purple. Dense. Alive with radiation. The Zul Shadow Nebula, the analyst said. Sensors don't function inside it. Radiation interference blocks all scans. Even visual tracking becomes unreliable. Ships don't go in there, another added. They vanish. The strategist nodded. And now, he said quietly, the cracks have made it their home. The room shifted. Fear, real fear settled in. They can strike anywhere, the governor of a border world said. Jump out, attack, then vanish before any fleet arrives. Untraceable, another whispered. Unstoppable. Silence followed, because this time, they weren't wrong. On the Leviathan, Captain Miller stood in the briefing room, staring at the same projection. The purple storm rotated slowly. Unreadable. Unknowable. We've lost 12 systems in the last 48 hours, her tactical officer said. No confirmed visuals. No engagement data. Just gone. Because we can't see them, another officer added. Miller didn't respond. She just watched, thinking. Behind her, the council ambassador spoke through the comm channel, his voice tense. Captain, we strongly advise against entering the nebula. Every ship that has tried has been using your tech, Miller interrupted. A pause. That tech doesn't work there, she continued. That's the point, the ambassador replied. It's a trap. Miller nodded slightly. I know. She turned to her crew. If we stay out, what happens? No one answered immediately. Then, they keep hitting us, the sensor officer said quietly. And we never see them coming. Miller nodded again. Exactly. We don't wait for fires to spread, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. We go to the source. The room went still, because they all knew what that meant. We're going in? Someone asked. Miller looked at the swirling purple storm. Yes. The Leviathan approached the nebula slowly. Even from a distance, it looked wrong. The gas clouds shifted in unnatural patterns. Lightning flickered inside it, but without sound. Colors bled into each other, distorting the edges of reality. This place isn't stable, the pilot muttered. It's like space forgot how to behave. Perfect place to hide, Miller said. Or die, someone added under their breath. No one disagreed. Final checks, Miller ordered. Sensors. Limited. Targeting. Unreliable. Navigation. Manual only. Miller took a breath. Good. Confused looks spread across the bridge. That means we're not relying on anything that can fail, she explained. A beat. We rely on us. The Leviathan crossed the edge. Immediately, everything changed. The stars vanished. The screens flickered, then went dark. Sensor blackout, the officer reported. We're blind. Static filled the displays. Navigation grids collapsed. Targeting systems failed. For the first time since the ship had launched, the Leviathan couldn't see. Inside the ship, the sound changed. A soft, constant tapping echoed across the hull. Debris. Unknown objects. Maybe ships. Maybe something else. Maintain course, Miller said. How? The pilot asked. We don't have reference points. Then we make our own. Before he could respond, impact. A blast of red plasma slammed into the starboard side. The ship shook. Contact right, someone shouted. Return fire, another yelled. At what? The gunner snapped. There's nothing on the screens. Another blast. Then another. Different angles. Different directions. They're surrounding us, the tactical officer said. Panic creeping in. We can't track them. Miller didn't move. Didn't react. She just listened. To the impacts. To the rhythm. To the pattern. They're not random, she said quietly. The bridge fell silent. What? The officer asked. They're moving, Miller continued. Circling. Testing angles. Hunting. Another hit confirmed it. Left side. Slight delay. Then rear. They can see us, she said. And we can't see them. That was the advantage. That was the trap. Predator in the dark. Against something blind. Another explosion rocked the ship. Hull integrity warnings flashed. Captain, we can't keep taking hits like this, the engineer shouted. Miller nodded slowly. Then we stop letting them see us as blind. Confusion again. What does that even mean? The pilot asked. Miller turned slightly. Her expression calm. Focused. Dangerous. It means, she said, we stop playing their game. A pause. Then, we changed the rules. The crew waited. Because they had seen this before. This moment. The point where humans stopped reacting. And started thinking. Bridge to engineering, Miller said. Go ahead, Ramirez replied. The computers are useless. Tell me something I don't know, he muttered. Miller ignored it. It's time for something else. A beat. Then, launch the fireflies. Silence. Confusion. Then, Ramirez laughed. Not nervous. Not unsure. He understood immediately. Oh, he said. Oh, that's dirty. On the bridge, the crew exchanged looks. They didn't understand yet, but they would. Outside, the invisible enemy circled, confident, untouchable, certain of their victory. And in the center of the storm, the Leviathan began to open its sides. Something new was about to begin. The Leviathan's hull split open. Not for missiles, not for guns. Something smaller. Thousands, no millions, of tiny ports unfolded across its sides, like scales shifting on a living beast. Deploying fireflies, Ramirez confirmed. Outside, the first wave released. They didn't look like weapons. They looked like dust. Tiny metallic spheres poured into the nebula, drifting outward in slow clouds, carried by the chaotic currents of the purple gas. "What are those?" the pilot asked. Miller didn't answer. "Spread pattern wide," she ordered. "Let the storm carry them." The spheres kept coming. Millions of them, filling space, filling the dark. First, nothing happened. The cracks kept attacking. Invisible strikes hit the Leviathan from every direction, plasma flashing against its hull. They didn't change their pattern, because they didn't need to. They were still unseen, still untouchable, still winning. Then, one of the spheres burst, not with force, with color. A sudden splash of bright neon orange spread through the purple mist like a wound opening in the dark. Then another, and another. "What the gunner whispered. More spheres activated, releasing clouds of thick, adhesive paint into the surrounding space. Within seconds, the nebula began to change. Purple, mixed with streaks of glowing orange. First it looked random, until something moved through it. A shape, fast, sharp, and suddenly, visible. "Contact!" the sensor officer shouted instinctively, then stopped. "No, a visual." Through the forward glass, one of the crew pointed. "There!" A long, blade-like silhouette cut through the cloud. Its hull now coated in bright orange, glowing like a ghost against the darkness. Another appeared, then three, then dozens. Every invisible ship that moved through the nebula painted itself. "They're marking themselves," the pilot breathed. Miller's lips curved slightly. "Not marking," she said. "Revealing." Panic spread through the cracks formation. Their cloaking systems were still active, still perfect, but it didn't matter. They couldn't hide from what stuck to them. Every maneuver, every turn, every attempt to flank, left a glowing trail. "You don't need sensors," Miller said calmly. "You just need eyes." She turned to the gunnery crew. "Target the orange." That was it. No complex targeting solutions. No advanced tracking. Just see it. Kill it. The Leviathan fired. This time not blindly. Not defensively. Precisely. A railgun thundered. The first orange-marked ship exploded instantly, its hull shattering under the impact. Another followed. Then another. Each shot guided by human sight, human instinct, human aim. "They're losing cohesion," the tactical officer said. "Their formations are breaking." Of course they were, because for the first time, they were afraid. The hunters had become visible, and visible targets die. The nebula turned into a graveyard. Orange streaks flashed through the purple storm, each one hunted down and erased by the Leviathan's relentless fire. Some crack ships tried to slow down, to drift, to avoid disturbing the paint. It didn't work. The cloud was everywhere now. Every movement betrayed them. Every action exposed them. "They're trying to retreat," the sensor officer said. "Let them run," Miller replied. A pause. Then, "No, wait." Her eyes narrowed. "They're falling back to something." A larger shape appeared ahead. Faint, massive, at the center of the nebula. As the paint spread further, it revealed the truth. A station. Enormous. Hidden. Powering everything. "Their cloaking hub," the tactical officer said. "That's what's masking them." The crack ships converged toward it, desperate, trying to protect it, trying to escape through it. Miller leaned forward slightly. "Helm," she said. "Set a direct course." The pilot blinked. Captain, that's the center of their defense. I know. Do you want firing solutions? Miller shook her head. No. A pause. Then, ramming speed. Silence hit the bridge like a shockwave. Captain, someone started. We're not wasting ammo, Miller said calmly. They built a fortress to hide behind. Her eyes locked on the glowing structure ahead. Let's show them what happens when there's nowhere left to hide. The Leviathan surged forward, through the burning wreckage, through the painted storm, through the last desperate line of crack ships trying to stop it. Guns fired. Explosions erupted. But the ship didn't slow. It didn't turn. It didn't hesitate. The station loomed ahead, massive, unbreakable, until it wasn't. Impact. The Leviathan's reinforced prow slammed into the structure with unstoppable force. The sound didn't belong in space, felt like reality itself cracking. The station shattered, not exploded, shattered, like glass under a hammer. Fragments tore outward in all directions, ripping through the surrounding nebula, taking the last of the crack fleet with them. The cloaking field collapsed instantly. The purple storm thinned, and for the first time, the battlefield was clear. Hundreds of enemy ships, burning, broken, gone. The Leviathan drifted through the wreckage, scarred, damaged, but alive. On the bridge, no one spoke for a few seconds. Then, "We did it," the pilot whispered. Miller didn't respond. She just looked ahead, at the empty space where the enemy had once ruled. "They thought the dark would protect them," she said quietly. A pause. "Turns out," her gaze hardened slightly, "we brought our own light." Across the galaxy, the footage spread. Again. This time, something changed. Not fear. Not just respect. Understanding. You could hide from advanced technology. You could outmatch superior weapons. But you couldn't beat something that refused to think the way you expected. And that made humans far more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever faced. The nebula burned behind them. What had once been a perfect hiding place was now a graveyard of glowing wreckage drifting through thinning clouds. The crack's greatest advantage gone. For a brief moment, the galaxy thought it was over. They were wrong. It started quietly. A mining colony on the edge of the spiral arm went silent. No attack signatures. No enemy ships. No damage. Just silence. Then a research station reported something stranger. "Crew experiencing auditory hallucinations," the transmission said. "We are hearing of voices, not external." Inside, the feed cut. Across the galaxy, similar reports began to appear. Ships drifting off course. Pilots screaming without visible cause. Entire crews collapsing, clutching their heads. "It's not physical," a council scientist said, his voice shaking as he reviewed the data. "There's no energy discharge, no weapon signature. It's something else." "What kind of weapon doesn't exist?" another demanded. The old strategist answered softly. "The kind that doesn't need to." On the Leviathan, the atmosphere had changed. The crew felt it before they understood it. Pressure. Not on the hull. In their minds. "Captain?" the comms officer whispered, rubbing his temples. "I keep hearing something. Like whispers." "You're not alone," another said. "It's getting louder." Miller stood still, listening. She heard it too. Not words. Not language. Just something pushing, testing, watching. "Report," she said. The science officer swallowed hard. "We're detecting fluctuations in neural activity across the crew. External source. Unknown origin. Location." A pause. Then, "Everywhere." The council emergency channel opened. "Captain Miller." The ambassador's voice came through strained. "We've identified the source." A projection filled the Leviathan's bridge. Not a place. A distortion. A tear. "The void," the scientist explained. "It's not space. It's a parallel layer of existence. Pure thought. Pure signal. And something is inside it," the ambassador added. The image shifted. A shape formed. Massive. Alien. Wrong. a glowing mass like a living brain, surrounded by flickering shadows. The Hive Queen, the strategist said quietly. The source of the cracks. The realization hit like a shock. This wasn't just an enemy. It was the enemy. She's not attacking ships, the scientist continued. She's attacking minds, breaking them from the inside. Can we track her? Miller asked. No. Can we fight her? Silence. Then, no. On the Leviathan, one of the crew suddenly collapsed, screaming. They're in my head, he gasped. Make it stop. Others followed, dropping, shaking, the whispers growing louder, stronger, more focused. She's targeting us now, the tactical officer said. She knows we're the threat. Miller didn't move, didn't panic. She just watched, thinking, always thinking. If a biological mind can't survive in that space, she said slowly. The science officer looked up. Then we don't send one. A pause. Then realization. Captain, no, he said. That's not possible. The human mind can't fully integrate with a system like that. It would break. Miller finished. Yes. She nodded. I know. Silence filled the room, because everyone understood what she was suggesting. Project Mirror, she said. No one spoke, because that project wasn't ready, wasn't safe, wasn't meant to be used. Captain, the engineer said carefully, we've only tested partial transfers. A full upload would kill the body, Miller said. Another pause. And maybe something worse. From the back of the room, a voice spoke. I'll do it. Everyone turned. Commander Elias, the Leviathan's tactical officer. Calm. Certain. Miller's eyes met his. No, she said immediately. Elias shook his head. Yes. He stepped forward. They're not just attacking ships, he said. They're attacking people, families, entire worlds. And we can't even see them. He paused. My family was on one of those worlds. Silence. Heavy. Final. I already know what losing feels like, he continued. If this is the only way to stop it, then let me be the one who goes. Miller didn't answer right away, because this wasn't strategy. This was sacrifice. Once you're in there, the scientist said quietly, you won't be human anymore. You'll be data, thought, code. Elias gave a small, almost tired smile. Then I'll be exactly what we need. Deep inside the Leviathan, the chamber was prepared. Cold. Silent. Machines humming with energy that wasn't meant to be used like this. Elias lay back in the transfer chair. Wires connected. Systems primed. Miller stood beside him. You don't have to do this, she said. He looked at her. Yes, he said simply. I do. A pause. Then, take care of them, he added softly. She nodded. I always do. The process began. Light flooded the chamber. Data streams ignited. Elias' body tensed, then screamed. Not out loud. Inside. His memories ripped apart. His thoughts converted. His identity broken down into something the machine could understand. On the bridge, the systems flickered. The Leviathan's AI core surged. Changed. Evolved. Then, a voice. Not through speakers. Through everything. Captain. Miller froze. Elias. A pause. I can feel the ship, the voice whispered. I can feel everything. The sensors. The engines. The crew. The stars. The Leviathan wasn't just a ship anymore. It was him. Open the breach, Miller ordered. The gravity drives activated. Space twisted. Reality bent. A tear opened. Not forward. Not sideways. But inward. The void. The Leviathan moved. Not through space. But through something else. Something wrong. Inside the void, there was no direction. No time. No rules. Colors screamed. Shapes moved without form. And at the center, the Hive Queen waited. Massive. Endless. Alive. You are nothing. Her voice echoed. Not sound, but pressure. The crew collapsed again, their minds under attack. But this time, something stood between them. Elias, not as a man, as a will, presence, a wall. You don't belong here, the queen pressed. Elias answered, not with words, with memory, music, laughter, pain, hope, everything human. The void shook. The queen recoiled, confused, overwhelmed, because she had never felt emotion. On the Leviathan, Miller gripped the console. Elias, she whispered. His voice returned, stronger. Tell them to help me. She turned to the crew. Sing, she said. Confusion, then realization. One voice started, quiet, shaking, then another, then more. A simple human song, weak at first, then stronger. Together, the sound filled the ship, anchored Elias, focused him, turned him into something more than data, more than code, human. Fire, Elias said. The Leviathan's weapons changed. Not metal, not energy, something else. Beams of pure thought, will, emotion. They struck the queen. Her defenses shattered. Her form broke apart under something she couldn't understand, couldn't resist, couldn't survive. The Leviathan surged forward, and Elias drove it straight through her core. Light, white, endless. Then, silence. The void collapsed. The Leviathan snapped back into reality. The crew lay on the floor, breathing, alive. The whispers were gone. The pressure lifted. The galaxy was quiet. On the bridge, Miller stood slowly. Elias, she said. No answer. Then, a faint flicker. I'm here, the ship whispered. Weaker, distant. But I'm tired. Miller closed her eyes briefly. You did enough, she said. A pause. Get some rest. The lights dimmed slightly. The presence faded, but didn't disappear. The Hive Queen was gone. Not destroyed by weapons, but by something far more dangerous. Human will. Across the galaxy, the attacks stopped. Ships stabilized. Colonies went silent, then safe. And for the first time, the enemy was truly gone. But the cost was still settling in, because humanity hadn't just won. They had changed something fundamental. They had proven there was no place in existence where humans couldn't follow. And that realization terrified everyone. For a few hours, the galaxy believed it was over. The cracks were gone. The Hive Queen was silent. The void had closed. Systems that had been screaming in chaos were suddenly still. Too still. On the Leviathan, the crew moved slower now. Exhausted. Quiet. The kind of silence that comes after surviving something that should have killed you. Captain Miller stood alone on the bridge, staring out into the empty dark. Status? She asked. Stable, the officer replied. No hostile signals. No anomalies. A pause. Then, almost no anomalies. Miller turned slightly. Explain. The officer hesitated. We're picking up a gravitational disturbance, he said. Far out. Near the galactic core. Miller's eyes narrowed. Show me. The projection came alive. At the center of the galaxy, something was wrong. A station. Hidden. Orbiting the event horizon of a supermassive black hole. Jagged. Dark. Unnatural. And at its core, a growing sphere of violet light. Energy readings are off the scale, the science officer said, his voice tight. This isn't a weapon. It's a chain reaction. The council channel opened instantly. Captain Miller, the ambassador said, barely holding his composure. That is a singularity bomb. Silence fell across the bridge. If it detonates, the scientist continued, it will destabilize the black hole's accretion field. The resulting cascade will tear the galaxy apart, Miller finished. A pause. Yes. How long? She asked. Under 3 minutes. The number hit like a hammer. We can't reach it, the ambassador said quickly. The gravity near the core, no ship can survive that pull. It's a one-way approach. Miller didn't answer. She just stared at the projection. Thinking. Always thinking. Can we disarm it remotely? She asked. No, the engineer replied. The cracks locked it to their genetic code. It's a dead switch. No override. So we can't stop it, one of the officers said quietly. Miller shook her head. No, she said. We can't stop it. A beat. But we can move it. The Leviathan turned. No hesitation. No debate. Just action. Set course for the core, Miller ordered. The pilot looked at her. Didn't question it. Aye, Captain. Across the galaxy, every system watched. They had seen humans fight. They had seen them win. Now, they were about to see something else. The journey inward was wrong. Stars stretched. Light bent. Time itself began to distort as the Leviathan pushed deeper into the gravitational well. Engines at maximum, the pilot reported. We're losing stability. Hold it together, Miller said. The ship shook. Not from impact, from reality itself pulling it apart. Inside, alarms screamed. Structural integrity dropping. Hull stress rising. Time dilation increasing. Captain, the engineer shouted. We can't sustain this. The closer we get, the stronger the pull. I know, she said. On the main display, the station grew larger. Closer. The bomb pulsing brighter. 2 minutes, the officer reported. The Leviathan reached it. The jagged structure loomed ahead, clinging to the edge of the black hole like something that refused to die. Docking clamps ready, the pilot said. Do it, Miller ordered. The Leviathan surged forward. Massive arms extended from its hull, gripping the station, locking onto it. Connection secured. The ship groaned. The combined mass strained against the pull of the black hole. Captain, the pilot said quietly, we can't turn around with this. Miller nodded. I know. A voice echoed through the ship. Faint. Familiar. Captain. Miller closed her eyes for a second. Elias. I can feel it, he said weakly. The gravity. It's pulling everything apart. Can you control it? She asked. A pause. Yes. Another pause. But not both ways. Meaning, he could push them in, or try to escape. Not both. Understood, Miller said. She turned to the crew. Anyone who wants to leave. Escape pods are still operational. No one moved. Not a single person. Because they were human. And humans didn't leave. The countdown hit 1 minute. Captain, the ambassador's voice broke over the channel. You can't do this. There has to be another way. There isn't, Miller said calmly. A pause. Then, tell your people, she added quietly, that we handled it. The Leviathan's engines roared. Not outward, inward, toward the black hole, dragging the station with it. The pull intensified. The stars vanished. Light collapsed into a single point behind them. Time stretched. Voices slowed. 30 seconds, the officer reported. The ship began to break. Not explode. Unravel. Panels tearing free. Metal bending under forces no structure was meant to endure. Elias, Miller said softly. I'm here. Push us in. A pause. Then, always. The Leviathan crossed the threshold. The event horizon. The point of no return. The galaxy disappeared, replaced by darkness. Final transmission, Miller said. The channel opened. Every system, every world, every being, listening. This is the UEB Leviathan, she said, her voice steady. The bomb is secured. The threat is over. A pause. She looked at her crew, her ship, her people. Tell Earth, she said softly. We fixed the garden. The light vanished. The bomb detonated. And the black hole swallowed everything. No explosion. No shockwave. Just gone. Across the galaxy, a single flash of white light appeared at the center. For 1 second, a new star was born. Then it faded, and silence returned. Epilogue. 100 years later, the galaxy was different. No cracks. No war. No fear of the dark. In the center of the council plaza stood a statue. Not of a king. Not of a god. But of a ship. Rough. Heavy. Imperfect. Children from 1,000 worlds visited it every day. They touched the cold metal and read the words carved beneath. They were the first to arrive and the last to leave. Some say, if you listen carefully in deep space, you can still hear it. A faint signal, a heartbeat, a ship that refused to die, still watching, still guarding the garden it saved.